Hello, welcome to this video. Today I wanted to talk about how to read more in 2025. So there are many videos on the internet which talk about how to read more, and I always find them quite humorous because I feel like you can read tips which can help you read more, but I also think the answer is kind of obvious if you want to read more. But I think what people are looking for when watching these videos, which is myself included, is to feel inspired to read and to feel motivated to read. And so that's what I'm going to do in this video. I'm going to talk about why I think reading more in 2025 would be a wonderful thing to do with your life. So I think I have a tendency to overthink things. If there is something that can be thought about, I can think about it for a long time. And I think what I need to do is really to put a lid on those thoughts sometimes, because everything is good in moderation. And I think there is a limit to every thought because you can't, I don't think it's really that helpful to sit in a chair and for hours think about a problem or something that is frustrating you in your life at that particular point. It can be helpful to process things, but also sometimes you need to move on. But it can be hard to do so because my brain really likes to keep me within a thought sometimes, and it sets the scene with the lighting and cinematography, and then I'm in the scene and I really struggle to come out of it. And I think really what has always been a solution to me is books. And I feel it immediately. Every time I start to read, I realise that thing that I was thinking about, that problem that I had that I couldn't quite get out of my mind, is immediately more muted. Because now I'm in this different world with these different characters, and I do it every time. I'm like, why was I thinking so much about that thing? It's actually kind of strange to be that self-involved, to think about that problem that you have. Like, think about something else and other people for a moment. And I really think that is the main joy that can be derived from books, because it's just complete escapism. I think that you can get the same thing from any form of art, and really to probably the same degree. But I think there's something quite intimate about reading, because it's just you and the words on the page, and if you get distracted for a moment, the story does not continue. So you are really required to commit to that story and keep your focus on it, which really prevents you from wandering off and thinking other things, which is not always the case, because sometimes you read a line in a book and then I'm off for an hour thinking about that line. But I think that kind of thinking is okay. I think the kind of thinking that I'm talking about is like excessive overthinking, which is good to find a antidote to, which is books. And if you want to escape into a fantasy world with interesting characters and a plot that keeps you guessing, you've got Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. And if you want to read about normal people having normal conversations about normal everyday life, then you've got Intermezzo by Sally Rooney. Or if you want to read a story about a woman's life which makes you feel very grateful to be alive, you've got something like 10 Minutes and 38 Seconds by Ella Shafak. Those are just some of my favourite books that I read in 2024. And that is just a wonderful thing about books. There are so many stories out there to escape into. So at this point, I wanted to add that I think it's okay to go through reading phases. I do that too. Sometimes I read a lot and I finish a book and then I'm straight on to the next one, because I'm like really in that just reading mood where I just want to read everything. But there are times when I read a bit less and other things take my interest. I love my Nintendo Switch and watching movies. And I think that's very normal. I think when we do something too much, it's only natural that it probably becomes less interesting to us. And so I do think it's, maybe quite a good thing actually to let reading go through phases. Although I guess there are people out there who just read like all the time, which is quite impressive to keep up that same level of consistency. But the reason I mention this is because I was going to say that I think you shouldn't force yourself to read. Like, if you don't want to do it, just don't do it. There are plenty of other things that you can do. But I'm going to also contradict that thought and say that I think sometimes it's good to force yourself to read. And that's because I think that sometimes our brains want the worst for us and maybe want us to sit on Instagram and scroll, because it numbs our brains a bit and it can feel like doing something like that is making life easier to deal with, but actually it's not as beneficial to you as reading, I would say, because reading brings the brain alive rather than numbing it, and I think that is a better option. And so I do try to force myself to read even if I'm not feeling it, because usually what happens is like 5 minutes into reading I realize that I feel so much calmer and less anxious than I did before, and that this was definitely like the right decision to make. So also I think it's really good to have reading as part of your daily routine. I think having a slice of a story every day can really bring a lot of happiness and brightness to your life. And how to do that? I think audiobooks can help. I listen to a lot of audiobooks because when life is busy, there are always opportunities, I think, to listen to audiobooks, like when you're cooking or when you're washing up or when you're on your daily commute. And sometimes it can be easier when doing those things to listen to audiobooks, because it's like there are lots of like distractions in those moments. But when you're listening to the audiobook, if you're distracted for a moment, the story doesn't stop, it continues, whereas you don't get the same thing when you're reading on a page. I think also setting a specific time every day to read for just a little bit, even 10 minutes, can really help keep reading a consistent part of your life, like reading 10 minutes before going to sleep, or maybe sometimes an hour before going to sleep, you know, allowing that number to fluctuate, but reading for at least a certain amount of time before sleeping, I think can just really help make reading a consistent part of your life. And I think it's also nice to always have a story on the go, because there's always then a story that you can think about, and that you can be like, what's going to happen next? And then you're always excited as well to like read the next book, to finish this book so you can get on to the next one. And I think reading is just such a wonderful thing. And I think in the modern world, there are so many things that are shouting for our attention. And I feel like some books do shout for your attention, but I think books are actually a bit more like, they know their worth. I think, you know, they sit quietly on the shelf and they're like, I know that I'm good enough. You come to me and I'll show you my worth. Whereas a lot of things in the modern world, like, watch me, give me your attention, because, you know, I want your attention, because attention is currency. And so I hope this video motivated you to read more in 2025. And yeah, thank you for watching.